You ever think about balance? You know, that single, invisible point that keeps everything stable. Well, what happens when that point of balance gets pushed way, way too far? We're going to dive into the tragic story of an aviation disaster caused by exactly that, a sudden shift of an invisible point. And you'll see what it can teach us about the physics that, well, governs our entire world. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's April 29th, 2013, at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan. A massive Boeing 747 cargo plane, National Airlines Flight 102, is taking off. Everything looks perfectly normal. It climbs, it passes 1,200 feet, and then just like that, something goes horribly wrong. The nose of this huge plane just shoots straight up toward the sky. It enters what's called an aerodynamic stall, which basically means the wings just stop flying. They lose all their lift. And from that moment, there was just no coming back. The crash was catastrophic, and tragically, everyone on board was lost. The entire crew of 7 people, 4 pilots, 2 mechanics, and 1 loadmaster. 7 lives gone in an instant. So this leads to the massive question, right? What on earth could have caused this? You've got a state-of-the-art Boeing 747, one of the most reliable planes ever built, and it just falls out of the sky moments after what looked like a perfectly fine takeoff. It just doesn't make sense. So of course, investigators from the NTSB and the Afghan authorities got to work right away to find an answer. So now the search for an answer begins. And this is all about the methodical, painstaking work of piecing together the evidence from those final tragic moments. For investigators, this process is absolutely critical. You start by combing through the crash site, looking for any and every physical clue. Then you analyze the remains of the plane itself. Every twisted piece of metal tells a story. But the real key, the thing that often cracks the case, is decoding the data from the black box. That's where the plane speaks for itself. And right away, they started ruling things out. First up, the usual suspects. Could it have been the weather? Nope, not a chance. The conditions that day were perfectly clear, so that wasn't it. Okay, so what about the engines? Maybe a catastrophic engine failure? Well, the black box data was crystal clear on this one too. All 4 of the 747's massive engines were running perfectly. So if it wasn't the weather and it wasn't the engines, something else, something inside that airplane must have gone terribly wrong. And this is what the investigation would call the critical shift. After ruling out all the external factors, they uncovered the single element that doomed this flight. The answer wasn't outside the plane, it was inside. And here is what they found. The ultimate cause was improperly secured cargo. You see, this plane was hauling 5 huge, incredibly heavy military armored vehicles. The investigation determined that they just weren't tied down correctly. So when the plane went into that steep climb during takeoff, they broke loose. And all of that immense weight went rolling to the very back of the cargo hold. This brings us right back to that idea we started with, the center of gravity, or CG for short. Now, think of it like this. It's the perfect balance point of any object. Everything has one. For an airplane, keeping that point in exactly the right spot is, well, it's everything. It's the absolute key to stable flight. When those massive armored vehicles, we're talking tens and tens of tons, suddenly slid to the tail of the plane, the center of gravity shot backwards way beyond its safe limit. As the official report states, this disturbed the CG of the airplane, causing it to stall. That dramatic shift made the aircraft dangerously unstable, pitching its nose up so violently that the wings just couldn't generate lift anymore. That was the fatal stall. But that brings up another really important question. I mean, pilots are highly trained for emergencies like this, right? Why were they completely unable to correct the problem and regain control? And here's the truly shocking part. Theoretically, the plane had enough power and control to counteract that shift. The systems could have responded and stabilized the plane in under 6 seconds. Less than 6 seconds. But they didn't. Why not? The reason is just a heartbreaking cascade of failures. One thing went wrong, which caused the next and the next. You see, when the cargo rolled back, it didn't just shift the plane's weight. It was like a battering ram. It smashed right through the plane's rear pressure bulkhead. And in doing so, it severed critical hydraulic lines and control systems. It basically disabled the pilot's connection to the tail of the plane. So even though they were desperately fighting the controls, trying to push the nose down, nothing was happening. They were effectively locked out, powerless to make the corrections that should have saved them. The story of Flight 102 is a terrible lesson in physics, but this principle, this unseen balancing act, it applies to so much in our everyday lives. For example, think about a double-decker bus. It's always going to be most stable when more people are sitting on the lower deck. Why? Because it keeps the center of gravity low to the ground. Now, if you crowded everyone onto that upper deck instead, the CG would be much higher, making the bus far more unstable and way more likely to tip over. So here's the big takeaway. For just about any object, from a massive cargo plane to a bus to even a skyscraper, the key to stability is keeping that center of gravity as low as you possibly can. It's a fundamental rule of engineering and physics. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've seen just how critical this balance is for a 747 and how it applies to something as simple as a bus. It kind of makes you look around and wonder, where in your world is that unseen critical balance most important?